Welcome back, everyone, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info, but as you may have seen from the rotating picture on your screen if you're watching this, we have an official presence again. It's our favorite brand manager, Drew. And Drew, you were recently on the show we were talking about OP and all the recent events, but there's been other recent events, and it's pretty exciting.
It is really exciting. You know what? I want a rotating picture. I just
Yeah, I do have that old one you sent me a while ago. We're gonna have to get something.
Make it happen. I want my picture to rotate. I want the 3D model of my head, just like because heads and bodies are separate now.
Yeah,
so
that's
I can put my head right there and just have it spin.
It's funny that it almost seems a little Halloween themed with that way, but. We're not that time of year. And it actually, this season, this time of year where we're leading up to the new set, caught me unawares. We knew that it was in April. Obviously, we now have the official date of April 17th. And I had joked on our last Tech Talk recording that my biggest complaint is that today is not April 16th because there's a lot of very interesting things going on with this new set.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, some days you just want, I don't know, bold 3, and some days you just want an extra 2 defense. So you just swap heads.
Exactly. It's like changing clothes. It's just, you just pop the new one in, you're good to go, I guess.
Yeah. So we announced Titan Masters Attack, which is Wave 5, as everybody who's listening probably knows, and it is a crazy chock full set with all kinds of wonderful things. And I know publicly we've talked about clearly Titan Masters and also Stratagems and also the Wreckers. And there's still another new game mechanic that we haven't even talked about. I'm not going to talk about here because yeah, the reveal will still come.
Okay.
But this one is really the sort of theme of everything that we're doing in Titan Masters Attack is enhancing customization. If you take a look at from a game mechanic point of view, what we are doing is we pulled in a whole bunch of things that give players further abilities to customize at sort of a granular level how they want their team and deck to work. And the high profile one are the Titan Masters,
of course.
But stratagems also work that way, right? Stratagems are a way for selected characters to basically give you a binary choice. Would you like your character to play this way or that way, the original printing way? And if you want to play with this new way, it's you pay the star or stars, because some of the stratagems do cost more than 1 star, and you get to do a cool thing that was different from the original printing of the character.
Yeah, of the two, I find myself personally leaning into stratagems. I find there have been a lot of apt analogies to other genres, and in general, I find them both fascinating and exciting, and I'm looking forward to the other ones that are coming out because there's different flavors that were revealed in that article, both the official one that you guys have released as well as the IGN article.
Yep. And one of the things that I wanted to make clear is there's 30 stratagems. Not every new character in Titan Masters. Some of them, as you can see from Orbital Strike, which refers back to Wave 1 Cosmos, there are stratagems that interact with cards that we've previously printed.
Yep.
I've mentioned previously that there's a card that I really like called Jurassic Punch, and there's some help for Volcanicus. That's a stratagem that helps Volcanicus specifically. Ooh. So that's another example of a stratagem that looks backwards. And then there's a couple of stratagems that are not character specific, and Swap Heads that Ken previewed in his article was one of those examples.
Yep.
There's a very small number of stratagems that are not specific to characters, but do care about something else that makes your deck characteristically unique. Like, are you playing using to Titan Masters is that one, but there's another. There are a couple.
Right.
Others.
Interesting. Oh no. They sound thrilled about it. So it definitely, everything you just said is very enticing, Drew, and it immediately gets into my brain, and the gears start turning. And there's probably, if I didn't have headphones on, the smoke would be coming out of my ears, because I love the idea that these stratagems allow for legacy options, as in you can get the cosmoses that were in wave 1, or you had mentioned a throwback to Volcanicus. I love bringing those other cards from previous sets forward, as well as getting new toys. It's fun to get the old toys out of the toy box and the toys you just got from the store and smash them together.
It is right. It's and there is a side. There's an implication that I want to confirm, which is that some people are writing, hey, they're releasing stratagems that care about wave 1 and 2 characters.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? How does that interact with the potential for rotation? And the answer is that we're still far enough away from sets rotating out that we're comfortable releasing stratagems now that look backwards to wave 1 and wave 2 characters.
Interesting. As you mentioned, that people were probably reading between the lines a bit, and that's good to have that official weight behind it, that's the route that you're going.
Yes. And it's been a concern for a lot of players, and it makes sense. It's like, hey, I love these things that I got at this point, a year ago or so, and I'm like still going to be able to play them. And the answer is for some time, yes.
Awesome, because I've grown attached to some of these characters, and I love being able to sleeve them up, or just smash with them when I have the availability. So it's good to know that they're going to be around for some time.
There's some interesting speculation going on, and I want to get your hot take. Without me confirming anything.
Okay.
And since I'm not on video, you can't see my
the wry smile.
But what characters do you? I'll ask each of you. Which character do you most hope gets a stratagem from an older set? And then is there any Headmaster or Titan Master character, because we're pulling from both, that you hope shows up in Titan Master's attack?
Well, can I answer your question with a question just to scope it a bit? Is there a limitation on these? Because that would also, I don't believe there's been anything publicly said about these throwbacks. Is it all going to be wave 1 and 2 for that thing, or are we going to see stuff from more recent sets?
For the purposes of this question, and without answering yours, give me an answer that is any of the previous 4 waves.
Okay.
And I really am not. I'm not answering your question, but I am curious because
I get you.
This is the kind of thing that helps us.
Of course. Scott, did you want to take it first? Did you have any ones burning a hole in your brain?
I think for me, the biggest one is Megatron Living Weapon, just because I think he's never really been all that playable. And I think his high star cost, it's high already, but I think that his ability is powerful enough where he doesn't need that much to push him over the top. So depending on what would happen there, I think he would be the most interesting for me personally.
Got it.
For my part, I mean, the obligatory answer is, of course, Soundwave, because either version, I just love me some Soundwave. But aside from the obvious one, I would love to see, and since you had already mentioned Volcanicus, some of the other combiners as well. While we saw aerial bots really make their mark, I am personally attached to, well, a lot of the guys on Team Purple. So some of their combiners could definitely use a boost competitively, and I also think it would be fun to have some of those show up at competitive tables.
So there is one limitation on stratagem. They all must cost a star.
Right.
We made this design decision so that no stratagem would be an auto include.
Okay.
Knowing that there are a few characters who, because they cost at least 1 star, are extremely unlikely to ever get a stratagem, and those are the characters and teams that are 25 points in and of them.
Fair.
Oh,
That
okay.
So Metroplex, for example, does not have a stratagem because he's 25 points.
Gotcha. And that logically makes sense in the grand design scheme, I guess.
Right?
In
Sorry,
terms of Titan or Headmasters.
Sorry, I think I missed that.
I was kind of older when Headmasters came out. The only one I actually owned as a kid was Brainstorm.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I'm not real I know that certain characters later, I guess in Titan's Return and that toy line got Headmasters, which I really don't understand. You could probably explain this better than me, which is part of the question I have. But I think Overlord was somehow involved in this, and I think he's probably one of the characters that I'm most looking forward to being in the card game. So I would say Brainstorm's the only one I ever owned as a kid, but then Overlord is in that set, so and has a head of some sort, so he would be the most interesting to me to be there.
Okay. Got it.
I'm trying to think who's a fun. I got one. For me, it would probably be Chrome Dome, and that leans back to the IDW comics, but also an actual headmaster. And I think there are a number of ways that he could be unique and interesting, depending on, I guess, lore-wise, how that plays out in the cards. Which set of Transformers history is pulled for him. That being said, like Scott said, Overlord would be cool. There's a lot of characters, and it's funny asking the question on the spot, who's somebody you think of, and as soon as we're done, I'm going to be like, I should have said these 10 other guys, but I'm going to go with him.
Okay. All right. At least one of you will enjoy something in Titan Masters.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess questions for that aside, Scott, I know you had a list that we talked about that's 15 miles long. If there was,
Sure.
Was there anything else you wanted to go over, Drew, before I kick it to Scott?
No, let's start with questions.
Cool.
Do you want to start with Stratagems, or do you want to start with Headmasters or Titan Masters?
Whichever you prefer. We can pick up the other one.
All right. So most of my questions in the beginning were about mostly about Titan Masters, just the way my brain was working. I guess more as a lore thing. Can you explain to me the difference between Titan Masters and Headmasters? Are they the same? I don't know.
Yeah. So that is an interesting question. So Titan Masters is, as a Transformers sub-brand, was part of a trilogy that came out a few years ago. And it, just in the same way that War for Cybertron Siege reimagined something from G1, that is, and specifically the last days of Cybertron, the Titan Masters sort of group of toys and media reimagined one of the other things from G1, and that was Headmasters. Headmasters are very basically back in G1. They were toys that had two characters together, and one of them was what you might typically think of as a Transformers character. So it had an alt mode like a truck or a tank or a plane or whatever, and then the other was a little pilot that in alt mode sometimes, but not always, could fit in like a cockpit, and could also turn from a little bot mode, the pilot, into a head, and it would clip into place on top of the body. And so there you go, you have a complete robot. What that head actually represented is one of the most convoluted things in the history.
You're not wrong.
Actually, a separate inorganic life form, a Transformers character in and of itself. And in yet others, there were alien, non-human alien influences. It was crazy. And so a few years ago, Hasbro released Titan's Return, the toy line, and they pulled a lot of that Headmasters toy stuff into the toy line in the 2000s. And there, it was reasonably certain, as I recall, that each head bot was a bot. It was another sentient character, and it gave special abilities to the body character. And when the little bot was in bot mode, it would almost every single one in the Titan's Return line had a cockpit that the little bot could sit in as if it was a pilot. And so there were some, oh, I'm really smart at driving. Like, I think Hot Rod's head partner was an excellent pilot. And then some of them had some really weird abilities. For example, Perceptor was reprinted in Titan's Return as a sort of like a sniper character, and his head partner could actually allow him to change size, and that's how the Perceptor turned into a microscope that other characters could use without having to stand on a ladder. So there was this super wide range of, hey, I'm really good at driving, to I have size manipulation powers. And then some of the characters were literally the Headmaster's G1 toys just reimagined, just in the same way that Transformers toys are frequently reimagining characters who have appeared before. And then some of them were new. And then some of them were characters who had appeared in other places, not as Headmasters in the past, that became Titan Masters. And so when we were putting together Titan Masters Attack, we wanted to use the most current terminology, which, for anyone who's wondering why it's Titan Masters and not Headmasters, that's the answer. That is the current official terminology. But we also, just as with Rise of the Combiners this time last year, knew that we wanted to pull together from all of the source material. So we didn't want to be just limited to the Titan's Return toy line, because there were cool characters from way back in the day who didn't make it in, but who had the old Headmaster technology. So these throwback sets, as we call them, because they look backwards to previous toy lines for inspiration, can be that place where we go and pull really cool bits that have a similar theme, and then sort of package it together in a way that game mechanically makes sense. Because one of the other things we were looking for is to have a wide variety of head abilities. And you've seen a few.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different ones, and they cost a variety of stars. Sort of appropriate. Allow no size manipulation. We're not getting crazy. But they're usually things that can be that are keywords with a number. And that allows you to choose, do you want to be more defensive? Do you want to be offensive? Do you want to care more about pips? Do you want to care more about avoiding damage in the first place? So you can really get kind of granular with how you put the heads and bodies together. And it also lets you play around to some degree with the total number of stars. There are 1-star heads. So if you really like a body and you don't want to pay a lot for a head, you can pick one of the less expensive heads.
Gotcha.
That has a lower power level on the head, right?
Of course.
Sure.
Or if you want to go all in and make this body primary character, you can get one of the more powerful heads with the higher star cost. It really leaves it up to you.
Interesting. I mean, that plays exactly into what you were describing earlier with the customization, the modularity of the mechanic as a whole, but especially when it comes to deck building decisions.
Yep. And swap heads is interesting because early in the very early phases of game design, we had these kind of grand ideas that you would play lots of Titan Master characters. Okay. And you would be constantly swapping heads back and forth. And that, right? So it's like, this guy's defending now. I will play the action card that swaps the defensive head onto the guy who's currently defending in combat, and everything will be glorious. And the problem with that is that it's just how many Titan Master character head and body combos can you play at once?
Right.
It's just limited by the total star factor. And that gameplay ended up with sort of like Constructicon level guys, and that wasn't really
Gotcha.
satisfying, right? Like if you really wanted to play like a lot of head shenanigans, and that for that to be the central mechanic, you ended up with these very, very very, very weak characters with low star costs. So you had lots of choices, and that was really not satisfying. And instead, it became much more obvious that we wanted characters, bodies that felt meaningful in and of themselves and could afford to have cool abilities on them. Think of the way Sergeant Cup has that really interesting Wreckers related ability.
Yes.
If that was on a 6-star character, it would be dead really quickly. Like we would just never be able to do that on a really tiny character.
Right.
So we opted in favor of having fewer, more meaningful Titan Master characters on a team. And our play testing, sometimes you play 2, and that's cool. And so we put in the stratagem that does allow you to swap heads if you go that route, but frequently you're playing 1 with other characters,
Makes sense.
other non-Titan Masters.
Makes sense. I guess.
Can we ask about? Oh, okay.
I was going to ask you, Scott. Does that answer your history on Headmasters and Titan Masters? Because I know that one's been bothering you for a while.
Yeah, there's still videos I have to rewatch to understand some of the logistics. But yeah,
there are. I'll admit, even there are some points where it's like, okay, that's just how it is. The lore, like, how do you explain some of it? But go ahead.
So from a logistical standpoint, I saw on the packaging that it said that you get a head with a body, or you get a stratagem with, I assume, a non-body. I assume you don't get like the head with the body, right? Like I assume that's both random.
That is correct.
Okay.
So this is how the sort of tree looks. You open a Titan Master's attack pack. If it has a head and a body, the head and the body are pulled from separate collations. So while it's possible, you may get the head that goes with the body. It's as random as getting any other head of the rarity that's in the pack. And the reason that we did that is specifically to encourage players and show them that you can mix heads and bodies that are not the canonical.
Interesting.
Pair.
Okay.
There's a lot of players out there who don't read the Facebook group or the Reddit or the rules document or listen to cool podcasts. And so we need a way to signal super loudly, we found in testing, that this is not a game where you can't play Cup's body until you find Flintlock's head. We wanted to show that this pairing comes to like the pairing that you get in the pack, playable right there. And we suggested that enough of a minority of players who weren't hooked well into the Transformers TCG Infoverse would just assume that if they got Cup and Flintlock, well, that's it. Like,
right.
Particularly folks who had not had a lot of Transformers toy experience and didn't know that part of the gimmick was to swap heads and bodies.
Makes sense. It's interesting that to that level, I mean, once you said it, it seemed obvious to have that teaching point, coaching point for exactly the audience you're describing that isn't as familiar, that's actually a fantastic way to just nudge people and be like, yeah, you don't really have to do it this way. You can do it any of these others. So.
Yep. And so if you don't get a head or a body, and this is I think this has been a big point of speculation. Are there non-Titan Master characters in Titan Master Attack? Yes, there are. Just in the same way there were non-combiner characters in Rise of the Combiners. We want to provide options for folks who, for whatever reason, aren't particularly interested in the main theme of the set. So there are a number of non-body characters that are just regular old large Transformers character cards. And
Gotcha.
in each of those packs, there will be a stratagem. And here, the stratagem is also random.
Okay.
So, So you will get and because stratagems look backwards as well, there's no way to make a one-to-one association.
Of course. Makes sense.
Uh,
The logistics of the specific head seemed like it would be ridiculous to me, let alone the stratagem thing. So I totally agree.
Makes sense.
Right, and that's not even taking into account the logistical nightmare, which is
Right.
it would be something that we could do. We could absolutely have done it for the heads and for the stratagems. It's logistically impossible.
Sure.
Right. Makes sense. One quick question on that front, since we're talking about the Titan Masters and who they go with. During the toy line, there was the option where it was not a deluxe, where it was head and body. It was other assorted, I don't want to say random heads, but is the relationship between the bodies and the heads one-to-one overall, as in there's one head for every body?
No,
I guess there's not.
I know what you're talking about. So,
Yeah.
so specifically in Titan's Return, the smallest package in the
Uh-oh.
and
You cut out a bit there, Drew. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yes, you're
Yeah,
back.
you're good.
Great. In the Titan's Return toy line, the smallest package of toy that you could get was just a Titan Master head
Yes.
and like a little accessory of some sort. And we've kind of said, okay, those accessories were cool, but we don't have a place for them in the TCG. So we focused on the Titan Master heads. And so there are a few more heads overall than there are bodies.
Gotcha.
And that captures some of the standalone head characters from Titan Master's Return. Sorry, from
it starts to run.
From Titan's Return.
Yes.
And so there are more head options around.
Interesting. That's actually really cool. Again, the marrying of the physical with the, well, I guess the cards are physical as well, but I hope everybody gets where I'm going with it.
Yep. And one of those standalone heads has a stratagem for the standalone head.
Interesting.
Wow. Okay.
That's layers on layers of, like, man, that's a lot to digest. I can't wait to see what that actually is.
It really is a kind of head scratcher when you look, what do you do with this? And that's why we didn't put it on the head itself.
Gotcha.
There are cool things you can do with it, but they require a little bit of, how am I going to make that work? That sounds interesting.
Okay.
And it's not along the lines of the stratagem, that is. That's not along the lines of, aha, I can now do 9 million damage if I just play this one card.
Gotcha.
It's much more of a deck building puzzle option. And we were all like, that's just too cool to not do. So
I like the sound of that. I mean, we're all card game players. You have to enjoy solving puzzles to some extent. Like it's a requirement.
It's also a gigantic flavor win.
Oh, then I can tell you right now, I'm probably gonna love it. So now I'm even more excited for it.
Shall I spoil the name of the card? It gives a lot away.
Oh, come on, man! You know you want to. The masses are waiting. Well, really, it's two of us right now, but the eventual masses are waiting.
No, I gotta hold this one.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
All right, that's allowed.
It is my second favorite card name after Jurassic Punch.
After Jurassic Punch, yeah, I was gonna say that one still makes me chuckle every time. So I'm definitely waiting with bated breath for that one to see the card text for it.
Matt Smith and I had a lot of fun writing the stratagem card.
It sounds like there's a lot of fun to be had in the design room. I'm not gonna lie.
It is. It is.
Go ahead.
I feel like I have more questions coming.
Oh yeah, there's lots. So Scott, go ahead.
So another logistical question. Each, like the smaller cards and obviously the bots and the battle cards, they all have their own rarities, right? Like there's rarities to the stratagems, there's rarities to the heads, I assume, right?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
And some of the Ken went into a little bit of that in the article. But one of the things that we've done is make it so that the backwards looking stratagems are rarer, so that when you're playing sealed deck, you have more of a chance to attack.
You cut out a bit, but I'm assuming that was
I don't.
so that you don't see cards that would be almost literally or are literally unplayable for
That's
limited.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
So I mean, you're going to open them sometimes, and hopefully everybody's happy. It's like, oh, I got a rare stratagem.
Gotcha.
But it's really to help sealed deck that we push them up in rarity.
It makes sense. I mean, that's certainly a logical thing to do. Well, I'm gonna keep kicking it back to you, Scott, because you came up with most of this list. So I know they were burning a hole in you.
We talked a little bit before recording about some of the unknown rules that there were. So I think one of the main questions that the community's had is about the whether a body with a head is considered a bot mode for various cards that reference that. I know that's come up. I was wondering if you guys had an answer to that and you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we try as much as possible to make all cards play as written, and bodies are bodies and bot modes are bot modes, and the same way that combiner mode is its own thing. There are battle cards in the set that refer to body mode, that refer to bot mode, that say body or bot mode, and it is distinct and played as written on the card.
Okay.
So this means that there are upsides and downsides when you're building decks. It means that there are a few cards that care about being in body mode that don't work with. Sorry, that care about being in bot mode that don't work with bodies, but that also works defensively. So body mode does your opponent's cards that care about bot mode don't touch your bodies.
Right.
A little bit of give and take there, and it falls into the category of, as you put it, making sure that things play as written. It was when that was revealed, obviously it spawned a whole bunch of questions, but it seemed pretty clear now that this is the pattern, that there's a reason that specific thing was chosen.
Yep.
On the rules end, I did have one quick question just to interject. So is there anything weird or different, for that matter, not necessarily weird, with the bodies, the heads, and sideboarding characters? Or is it as simple as it seems, or anything on that end you can disclose?
We'll publish that as we get closer towards
actual release.
Yeah, there'll be a big rules update.
Figured that.
In general, we're keeping it as simple and as intuitive as possible.
Of course. Sounds good. I just wanted to get that one snuck in real quick. Did that cover everything on the Titan Master side, Scott, that you wanted before we dive into stratagems?
The only other question I had is, does a Titan Master always have to have a head? Like, if the body gets KO'd, can you bring it back without a head in alt mode? Okay.
Nope. No.
No, I still functions on bodies.
There will never be a headless body in play.
Even in alt mode, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I also thought it was interesting that the star cost added together, and for cards that reference stars, I thought that was really interesting because I thought it was actually going to be the opposite way. So I thought that was interesting. So the only other question I had,
when a head and a body are paired together, they're effectively one character.
Okay. During like internal playtesting and things like that, obviously the mechanic kind of works like a reverse Battle Master. Did you find that like games swung as a result of the head popping off and getting that last shot? Like, that's what excites me about it. I just didn't know if that's the I guess theme or end of game procedure you were going for type of thing.
So there are a number of weird things that are interesting that can happen, and one of the most interesting is the head takes a hit for another surviving character.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the play pattern of ensure that my Titan Master gets KO'd before my non-Titan Master character, so the head pops off, so the head can basically soak up another attack. Because one of the things that's manifestly true in the Transformers TCG is doing 30 points of damage to KO a character that only needs 4 points to KO it is an enormous waste of resources.
Feels bad.
And So the head characters in bot modes running around, it's like, hey, you gotta hit me, ha ha ha. Switches up the cadence of attacking and has provided a number of interesting situations. There are definitely interesting ways in the set to bump up the damage of a head in bot mode. There's the obvious ones of it's a character, so you can put equipment on. But there are a couple of others. There have been situations where a head has swung for the kill, the KO and the win. So, yes, it does provide a whole bunch of really interesting possibilities.
It's almost like an interrupting mechanic from other games, which I found really interesting.
Right.
Yes, and it does play it does play a little bit different than Battle Masters, because Battle Masters change the flow of the early game, and then frequently go away. Right, like they turn into a weapon. Someone eventually deals with the weapon, and then they're gone. Whereas in the Titan Masters tend to affect the late game. So even though the mechanic has a lot of, I would say, shared DNA in the popping off and turning into a bot, it does play pretty differently.
Yeah, it just seems very more strategic, in my opinion, than because you might want to get a character KO'd on purpose in order to have that situation. You might want to swing earlier with what is a quote higher star bot. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a departure from most, maybe not most scenarios, but a lot of scenarios we've seen up to this point.
That is one of the most fun things about designing for the Transformers trading card game. It's being able to make each game, or finding ways for games to feel different from one another, or sort of structurally.
Yes,
and it's something that I think that we're pretty decent at, and it's something that we continue to test lots of different ways, and letting the ones that are higher quality bubble up and eventually reach publication. But I think it's something that is a really interesting hallmark. We want our games to feel different from month to month and release to release. So you keep us true. If we keep doing that successfully, let us know. And if it starts to waver, also let us know.
Absolutely. I mean, to this point, I've definitely felt that with each release, that there are different strategies, different play patterns that have manifested, and it's, in my opinion, definitely been healthy and worthwhile. So I'm definitely looking forward to trying these new ones out. To that end, speaking of new things, did you want to dive into Strategem, Scott? I know we also had a laundry list there.
Yeah, go ahead. You can start with those.
So, as I mentioned earlier, Stratagems were, to me, because of the legacy stuff, it drew me in, but also the modality of being able to, as you were saying, Drew, we have this new character. Do I want the stratagem for it, or this new strategy? Do I want the stratagem for it? Do I not want it? To give you all of these customization options. Is there, or was there any issue with, or how did the issues manifest with trying to cost these? Because obviously, if the goal is customization, you don't want it to just be, oh yeah, the stratagem is okay, I have to play the stratagem, or no, I never want the stratagem with this new guy because then I break up combinations. Was it a challenge at all with just all of the different combinations and permutations, or was it readily apparent just, okay, they cost stars and we can scale it?
With the exception of characters that intrinsically have very high star values, or characteristically need to be part of a team that has very, very fixed star allotment, like teams that add up exactly to 25 star, like non-combiner teams that are like, okay, this is 25 stars, there's no flex room.
Right.
But those situations are generally few and far between. So we focused a little bit more on making sure that the stratagem was fairly costed, And no stratagem is crazy cost. Like it's not. I'm almost positive. I could just look on my computer. I'm almost positive that no stratagem costs 4 or more stars. Like I think everything is 1, 2, or 3.
Gotcha.
And there it felt a lot in line to us with how one would consider star battle cards when building a team and deck.
Gotcha.
And the idea is to provide options with the distinction, and here the main distinction is the stratagem starts in play at the beginning of the game. So it offers reliability, whereas a battle card that costs a star might have a little bit of a higher power level in some cases.
Trade-off versus power, or consistency versus power. Yeah.
That's correct. It is a consistency versus power.
Gotcha.
Trade-off. And those are the kinds of things that we think make for good deck building options, and that people who enjoy deck building like considering when they're building it.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Nope.
A couple other oddball things related to them. So, and not to harp on the legacy piece, but going forward, Wave 6, Wave 7, etc., these are new card types. So, like, is this now an evergreen thing? We're going to see them just like, oh, awesome.
Stratagems are an evergreen card type.
Awesome.
Cool.
This is the probably going to be the largest single group of stratagems we will introduce at once.
Mm-hmm.
But we see this as a regular ongoing part of the TCG.
Awesome. I like the sound of that. So I guess the follow-up question to that is, are we going to see in the set, or I guess without going too far in the future, any way to interact with these as far as your opponent? So we have ramming speeds to pop equipment. Are there ways to eliminate these stratagems and then depower your opponent to some extent?
Not really in this set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we have designs for if needed.
Of course.
But
all eventualities.
Yeah. Right now, we don't want this to become a feel bad situation where you're like, okay, my entire deck is built around Cosmos having the ability to KO 21 star or less characters.
Right.
Turn 2. Stratagem goes away, deck falls apart.
Right.
You are very, very sad.
Yes.
Go home. That feels really bad to us.
Absolutely.
And so for now, the way to deal with the stratagem is to deal with the character.
Makes sense. And that's something that is definitely very encouraging for exactly the reason you outlined, that it would be a giant feel bad, and it then makes all the decisions much more interesting as we're trying to determine which is the appropriate way to take some of these characters.
Yep. Many of the stratagems do something that is kind of innocuous looking. Like Orbital Strike is very, very obvious.
Right.
It's more obvious than most, and part of the reason why we led with it is because it was really easy to understand.
Gotcha.
But some of the stratagems do things that, in and of themselves, may not provide a significant bonus or benefit. Only when you consider how to build a deck around the character that now has this extra thing or additional trait, which is one of the things that a stratagem that the deck building possibilities now open up wider, and you can do things with the character that you previously couldn't. So in some ways, Orbital Strike is a little bit misleading in that it is it's a significantly obvious and immediate benefit that doesn't require other deck building to help.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most of the stratagems really are saying you can now use this character in a different type of deck building.
Gotcha. I mean, it was outlined in the initial statements around it that, and you've highlighted that as well earlier, that it's the intent is not this is a straight up upgrade, not as in the card type, but This
Yep,
is just
some of
A is better than B.
that's correct. And there are a couple,
Mhm.
like Orbital Strike, and they cost stars that we think are now it's fair.
Right.
But that's not the main thrust.
Of course.
A couple of quick notes about stratagems.
Yeah.
The backside. I've noticed some people asking, what is the backside of a stratagem look like? It is the full art of the front side of the stratagem. So
Oh,
it's
that's
an
really cool.
uncropped, card-sized piece of art.
That's nice.
And some stratagems are one shots. That is, they start the game and play, and they say, when something happens, you may flip this stratagem to its other side to gain an effect related to the character.
Interesting.
And those are one-shot stratagems. And so when you use them, you flip them over to their textless art side to show that they've been used.
Cool. That's actually really awesome. It definitely. I mean, I was joking earlier, saying that planning for all eventualities, but yeah, you guys really seem to be hitting all the different scenarios for this.
Yeah, we really, one of the design hallmarks, and we have talked about it on the show before, is trying to sketch out a box to show players what the sort of realm of possibility are, so that they can be excited about something new.
Absolutely.
And with Stratagem, we definitely have a sort of scatter shot of different types and designs so that players can see all of the cool possible things the stratagems can do when we continue to include them in product.
Cool. That sounds amazing. Scott, while I'm digesting all the excitement, let me kick it to you for some of the questions you had.
When you were designing them and going forward, is this something where you're just trying to do something cool? Or are you looking at a different way of representing the character from a lore perspective, or is it like you're looking at the metagame and saying this character isn't being represented, I don't think, in competitive play or at all in the media that I see, it needs a boost? Is it, I assume, all three of these, or?
So it is all three of these. So stratagems came about from an ongoing discussion that the design team has had, and it started at a very philosophical level. Some games have silver, what we call silver bullets. That is, the bullet is a card or a mechanic or something, and it's like, okay, there's a problem, we're printing this thing, and it'll fix it.
Right.
And none of us like this because it's very inelegant. And ultimately, we want game design to be elegant, because elegant game design, the obviousness does not become the focus, and the coolness, the thing that you get to do as a player, does. And there are cards that we did not design well, or that we overjudged the power level, so they cost too much. And Cosmos was one of them. And I keep coming back to Cosmos because it's a card that lots and lots of players say, love this card. I love it. And it's a card that very, very few players actually play. And there's a reason for that. It's because he's underpowered. His ability looks amazing, but ultimately is generally too random. And part of the discussion was, all right, how do we do this? Do we just reprint it? Like, we could reprint a more powered up version of Cosmos, but that's kind of boring, right? Like, if we see Cosmos again, you want Cosmos to do something different, not just be like, oh, this is the Cosmo evolved version. And we also wanted players or collections to still be cool and meaningful. And so I really wish I could remember who came up originally with stratagems. Usually I'm really good at this. But it was not me. I think it was either Scott Van Essen or Ken Nagel. Might have been them together. They had this idea for 1-star battle cards that somehow started in play.
Okay.
And then that evolved it was like in the same way that Ultra Magnus's armor, because of Ultra Magnus's ability, starts in the beginning in play on Ultra Magnus, or how like Trailbreaker can go get his signature, Forcefield, and then that sort of evolved into the design for Stratagem. And then once we were talking about it, or more specifically, once most of the other designers were talking about it, they came up with all of these great things that you could do, and thus it suddenly became like, oh, this is just something that is amazing. We can do lots of really interesting things with. And so now, when we had decisions like, all right, how is this really cute piece of lore going to go on this character that really would cost another star or two, but super, super niche? Now we have an option for doing that. And suddenly it just made a lot of game design more interesting and possible.
Yeah, I played other character-based games. This is the first time I've ever seen a mechanic like this. I mean, obviously you have more experience out in this world than I do, but this is the first time I've ever seen this in a game I've played. So I find that to be really awesome that, like, instead of just power creeping out old characters, you're giving players a reason to dust them off and make them come out of the binder. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, like power creep is some point necessary in the life of a trading card game, but it is ultimately a confusing force, right? Like suddenly things that you liked aren't as useful anymore, and I think this is an elegant solution, and I appreciate that you the way you said that. It's kind of cool that 25 years into trading card games, new stuff can still happen. It's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Who says there's nothing new to be found? Come on.
All right. We have about 10 minutes left before I have to go to another point.
The pit.
The endless series of meetings that is Sunday. But I wanted to talk about in-store play a little bit.
Yep.
So in-store play has always had a kit that contains goodies that players can earn for participating in in-store play, and the sign-up period will be active by the time this show goes live. And that means that everybody who's listening out there, your local game store owner or manager can go into Wizard Systems and order an in-store play kit. And that is a great way for your store to support the local community. It's free to the store, so let's talk about the cool things in the kit.
Can I put these up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I am doing something live, folks. Well, sort of live, not live to you who may be listening to this afterwards. So, but yeah. I feel like I'd be stealing thunder, so Drew, would you mind introducing our hot new in-store play promo?
Sure. So the first one is Arcana. And Arcana is the release weekend participation prize. Arcana has is a head, costs Titan Master head, costs 4 stars. And the ability is really deceptively powerful. Flat 2 defense.
Yeah.
Plus 2D. In a game where many characters, even powerful ones, have 2D, getting the ability to just add plus 2D wherever you want it, or to whichever body you want it, is shockingly powerful. That's why Arcana costs 4 stars.
Right.
This is available if you go to a release day event at a store that's participating in Transformers in-store play. So go the first weekend and you can get your own Arcana. And then we have 3 promo cards that are also in the kit that you get for participating in weekly store play. So some stores run it for 3 weeks after release. So come back 3 weeks and you can get one of each of the promos. Some stores do it every other week. So just talk to your local store about how they run it. But we've done something new. In the past, the in-store play kit included reprint characters on special gold foil, and they looked really cool. I really love them. But we had an opportunity to do something here that was really neat, that didn't fit anywhere soon, but we wanted to do. And so we created a new character, and it is a 3-part combiner. And for Transformers fans out there, you might be a little surprised surprised that we did this one. It is Tidal Wave. So Tidal Wave is a really interesting character. It is the combiner mode, the sort of humanoid robot, is made up of 3 alt modes. So in some ways, it's a lot like Omega Supreme from War for Cybertron Siege 2, but they're both, which is kind of cool. So let's talk about this. So you really want to play all 3 of these characters together.
Yes.
So you can do combiner mode, but they all can be played in their alt mode, and there are really legit reasons to play at least 2 of them solo. So Tidal Wave is an aircraft carrier, a transport ship, and a battleship that unite to form a giant combiner. But I think the thing that is most cool about this is the aircraft carrier starts the game with a plane or helicopter underneath it that costs 4 or fewer stars. So, for example, some of the air patrol carriers might fit under here.
Right.
And when the aircraft carrier attacks, combines, or KO'd, you get to deploy the character to the battlefield. So this means you can choose any character that fits that that requirement. So any plane or helicopter that fewer 4 stars. And it doesn't cost you anything to deploy it, to put it under Tidal Wave. So it's not like the way Soundwave and Blaster cassettes cost stars when they're under. So again, read this as it's played. It does exactly what it says. But this allows for some crazy customization, and will continue to allow it. Like right now, I don't believe there is a 4-star helicopter. But who knows? That may change in the future.
Cough, cough.
I certainly wouldn't know. And the transport ship starts the game with a car, truck, or tank that is 4 or fewer stars underneath it. And there are some super interesting things that you can do with this one, because there are a lot more options.
Absolutely.
And then when it attacks, combines, or is KO'd. So in some ways, this is a 5-character team masquerading as a 3-character team that then turns into a giant combiner. It is one of my favorite teams to play in all of the Transformers TCG.
I can see why.
Yeah, right? It is super fun. And then for the Transformers lore fan, the lore, LORE fans out there, this character originally debuted not in a Generations toy line. And we got special permission from Hasbro and the Transformers team there to include it in the TCG. For a number of reasons. One of them was we want three-part combiners because they're really cool. They play really nicely. And another one was because we wanted more boats in the game.
Interesting. I was going to actually bring up, I appreciate that there are so many boats, kind of for a lull factor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's cool that you guys are actively putting more boats in.
Yep. Oh, and then we forgot. Once you get to actually, so how do they combine? The battleship doesn't have a deployment ability. But it has the combiner ability. It also has stealth, so it can survive.
Right.
So the combined trigger is when your second character is KO'd this game. Combine, which could be the 2 deployed characters that originally started underneath the aircraft carrier and the transport.
So you come in to play with full life. That'd be awesome. Yep.
Well, Scott, go ahead.
We learned a lot from Omega Supreme, and this design had a number of things that reflect the design work that we did for Omega Supreme, who was just a little bit too underwhelming. So, like the philosophy here is, if you're going to invest in a 3-part combiner, which is basically all your points, it needs to be really impressive, and it needs to give a new play pattern. And so this is sort of a philosophical.
This definitely fits that
experiment. And then when he combines, when Tidal Wave combines, he taps an enemy. which offers an entire number of really interesting things.
Yes, it does.
There's a number of interesting tactical situations that could occur there. Overall, I hope everyone has a lot of fun with this character. It was an absolute blast and truly a joy for the team to design this one and offer it to the player. And you can get it for free by going to in-store play.
Sweet.
If you're out there listening to this or watching it, get to your store, because this guy, I'm sure a lot of people on YouTube are going to see my facial expressions as you're talking about it and as I'm looking at the cards, and I'm blown away by Tidal Wave. This guy looks fantastic. And to your point, he looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That is good.
There's the other really interesting thing about even though it's Tidal Wave, because you get to, it's like, oh, my phone's playing Tidal Wave. It's like, oh, this may play differently depending on who's getting deployed from underneath Tidal Waves. There's a lot of depth to create and this sort of, even though it's not a Titan Master character, it falls. And the reason why we did this is because it's another way of allowing deck customization for a character that normally doesn't look like it, allow for significant character customization. And so,
right,
that falls into the you have many choices and they are all interesting, which is sort of the Uber theme for Titan Master's Attack.
I think the key adjective there is always, of course, interesting. Like they're meaningful choices, and they definitely, right now, looking at it, they definitely seem like they're going to be that way, which is incredible from the player perspective. Like that's exactly what you want. Or at least I know I do.
Yeah, heck, you could slammer under there.
Yeah, he was one of the guys that ran through my head. I'm not, I'm not even joking. Him and Brunt kind of mushed together at a certain point, but yes.
Yeah. All right, gents. I must return to the Monday.
All right. Well, as always, we appreciate you coming on, Drew. Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you guys, and I look forward to the next time we talk.
Yep. Looking forward to it. And everybody out there, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.